Okay, let's see what this is about.
We're joined now by Yanis Varoufakis, member of the Greek Parliament, former finance minister of Greece, latest book titled Another Now. He's also founder of Progressive International with Senator Bernie Sanders.
I love Yanis Varoufakis.
Welcome back to Democracy Now! Your response as you saw what unfolded over the last hours with this broad Russian invasion of Ukraine.
What can I say?
Almost 7 decades of game theory and study into mutually assured destruction from tacticians at the top of their constituent nations versus chatter staring at a monitor with a keyboard saying, nah, Putin won't nuke. Yeah. I mean, owned. Like, absolutely owned. Just like I was owned when I forgot to run the top of the hour ad break, which I will be doing now, because at the top of the hour, there's a 60-second ad break. If you no longer want to see those ads, all you need to do is subscribe. You can do that for $5. You can do that for free with the Twitch Prime. You can do that by getting gifted a sub. We're going to now hear from... You love Yanis, unironically? Yeah, I think Yanis is great. Yanis Varoufakis is awesome. Okay, if you're lucky, you can get gifted a sub as well. Here's the 1 minute ad break now.
I say it's a dark, bleak day for the world, for Europe in particular. War is back on the continent that was promised by our European Union, that war would never be back on our soil. Vladimir Putin is to blame entirely for taking this step, but at the same time, NATO must be condemned for creating the circumstances leading to Putin's escapade in the Ukraine. We have to stop this war right now, and we have to work very hard to stop any NATO escalation. We have to create international solidarity in order to ensure that the people of Ukraine live in peace, not under the boot of any army, and for NATO to keep
Thank you, Patagonia Vest Andy, for the
Europe,
5
and especially Eastern Europe, as let's not forget, George Bush, the senior George Bush, had promised Mikhail Gorbachev.
What should be the European Union response? The EU has promised unprecedented sanctions, holding an emergency summit in Brussels. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said sanctions will target strategic sectors of the Russian economy by blocking the access to technologies and markets that are key for Russia. And if approved, will, quote, weaken Russia's economic base, its capacity to modernize. She said, in addition, will freeze Russian assets in the European Union and stop the access of Russian banks to European financial markets. Your response?
Believe me, Amy, that Putin is not trembling in his boots listening to all this. Allow me to preface my answer by saying that the European Union is the greatest loser from what's happening, apart, of course, from the people in the Ukraine who are suffering the slings and arrows of war. The European Union is discredited. It has failed completely in its mission, which is to keep our eastern flank free of war. And now what we have is essentially adopting the NATO language, as if the European Union is simply an appendage of NATO. And also huge amounts of hypocrisy. You mentioned all those threats of great sanctions. It's like, you know, a pea shooter trying to stop a tank, because there is one sanction that could work, one sanction that Putin fears, and that is ending the purchases of natural gas from Gazprom. As we speak, Nord Stream 1 is a gas pipeline, is feeding the German industrial machine.
Damn, Yanis and I have similar... I had not seen this, but the interesting takes from Yanis Varoufakis.
Gas. They're not going to say anything about that, because this is a sanction they're not prepared to make. And therefore, we have this combination of diplomatic atrophy and hypocrisy.
What about the possibility of this escalating into a nuclear war? You have the very ominous threat of President Putin, who oversees the world's largest nuclear arsenal. saying in his speech, no one should have any doubts that a direct attack on our country will lead to the destruction and horrible consequences for any potential aggressor. You have the major nuclear power plants in Ukraine. We already know what happened with Chernobyl. That was when it was part of the Soviet Union. But the possibility of one of these plants being hit or workers not going to work out of fear or a cyber attack on them, what it could mean, possibly another Chernobyl. How do we deal with this around the world?
Well, when...
Is something like Russia dropping nukes on all of NATO at the same time possible? Dude. One nuke flies off and it's over. I don't know how many nukes it would take to destroy the entire planet, but the moment that like one nuclear warhead is deployed, there are other active, like there are submarines that are circling around the fucking planet. Okay? Like nuclear warhead, submarines with nuclear warheads in them. Circling the fucking planet, okay, as a deterrent measure and as a protective measure, I guess. Waiting for the opportunity. The moment that a fucking nuke is launched, is done. We have way more than Russia alone has like 1,000 fucking nukes, 1,000 times the nukes that you would need to destroy the planet. Maybe not 1,000, but like 500 times the nukes that you would need to destroy the entire planet. There are enough nuclear weapons to end life in the world 13 times over. Like the moment one nuke is launched, fucking, you might as well launch all the nukes, okay? Japan's prime minister says they will stop delivering PlayStation 5s to Russia. Okay, dude, come on. If all this nuke talk is making you anxious, then welcome to the fucking Cold War. Because this ideologically is like exactly where Americans and Russians were in leading up to the complete destruction of the USSR. And it was not a good time for foreign policy. It was, we did a lot of brutal, awful shit during that time. Oh. And not only that, but like even one nuke, like we don't even know the entire impact. I don't even know what a nuclear warhead would do to the atmosphere. You know what I mean? According to Russia invaded Ukraine. What now? Wait, what the fuck? Why am I on this thumbnail, bro? What am I? Am I invading Ukraine? What the fuck? Or maybe he means I'm defending Ukraine. We sent HasanAbi out there to defend Ukraine. Defend Ukrainian territory.
The beast of war is unleashed from its lair. Then all sorts of catastrophes are possible. I don't believe that Putin or the United States are planning to go that far, but you never know, because this is the great uncertainty that is liberated the moment the hawks begin to fly menacingly, over the heads of European peoples and peoples all over the world. The number one priority now is for
I'd fight
a
him.
Serious diplomatic initiative that sorts this mess out by giving Putin something that he can present the Russian people with as a victory. And that's something that would not have any costs for anybody around the world would be.
He pretty much says you were wrong and had bad takes and then apologized. My takes were good. My predictions were wrong. My takes are still good. And I wasn't alone on bad fucking takes. If you were to, you know, pull your head out of the mainstream media circle in the United States of America and like actually looked at what people were saying in Ukrainian media, Ukrainian leadership, and you know, analysts that are in Russia, even if they're Western. Anyway, let's continue.
For a declaration by NATO, by the United States, that Ukraine will not become a member.
Me and Zelensky had the same fucking predictions, for the record. Like I was, you know, relaying information from the Ukrainian fucking president. Not like I was, you know, pulling this data out of my fucking ass. The issue with your takes wasn't that they were wrong, that they were lazy. No, they weren't lazy, dude. They weren't lazy, okay? They were not fucking lazy. I backed it up by showing you actual fucking sources.
For troop withdrawal from the side of Vladimir.
It's okay to be wrong, but, you know, remember that there is a particular reason why. I don't know why I'm fucking doing this again. It doesn't matter. Just so fucking stupid. For the past like 2 months, I've been fucking talking about just clickbait is fine. He said you said Putin wouldn't be dumb enough to do anything with Ukraine. I mean, I was wrong. Yes, he was dumb enough. Not even dumb enough, mad. I said Putin is bad, not mad. Those were the words I used. And guess what? He was fucking mad. He literally was mad. Mad out of his fucking goddamn mind, okay? Off his rocker. Anyway, let's continue.
Putin, that he takes back that he stops, seizes all hostilities and removes all troops from Ukrainian soil. I believe that that would be potentially the foundation for a peace deal that would be in the interest of humanity, not just of the
Hold on. I'm going to pull this back.
Planning to go that far. But you never know, because this is the great uncertainty that is liberated the moment the hawks begin to fly menacingly, you know, over the heads of European peoples and peoples all over the world. The number one priority now is for a serious diplomatic initiative that sorts this mess out by giving Putin something that he can present the Russian people with as a victory. And that's something that would not have any costs for anybody around the world, would be for a declaration by NATO, by the United States, that Ukraine will not become a member of NATO, in exchange for troop withdrawal from the side of Vladimir Putin, that he takes back that he stops, seizes all hostilities and removes all troops from Ukrainian soil. I believe that that would be potentially the foundation for a peace.
God doesn't understand how prediction or theory works. You had good material analysis. The only thing you didn't predict was Putin's insane behavior. People who say your take is bad when you had good, solid foundation are so annoying. I know. Listen, I agree. So Giannis's theory, or Giannis's opinion here is nearly identical to mine, but there is no, like, he needs a W. Like, there has to be a fucking dub here, okay? It's going to be relentless if there is no W for using terminology that you understand. But if Putin doesn't see a fucking W out of this, it's not going to happen. And if you don't actually stress Putin harder by, I don't know, going around him and possibly fucking trying to gear up other OPEC nations, which that's a whole complicated sequence of events that might not even happen, most likely would not happen, to gear up oil production, to normalize energy prices. there is no way out of this. Either you have to literally escalate sanctions to a degree where it actually does fucking hurt the Russian economy severely, like in a way that he can't fucking manage. He can't continue to fund his military operations and all that. But the other thing I wanted to also mention is like even the madness of Vladimir Putin is calculated. Like we watched the Adam Curtis video last night. You were 100% right that OPEC would not increase production. By the way, this isn't even new information. I mean, I love Ken, but I talked about this before. This happened out in the open, like almost a month ago, or whenever this meeting took place. Like, and America tried to increase oil production, or urged OPEC countries to increase oil production, but not to a degree that like sidelines Russia. POTUS is appealing to American gas companies. My administration is using every tool at our disposal to protect Americans and business from rising prices at the pump. We are taking active steps to bring down the cost, and American oil and gas companies should not exploit this moment to hike prices just to raise profits. Yeah. Hey, man. Sounds a lot like fucking communism to me, brother. Let me just say something here. Good luck with that. Okay. What is this? Snake Island? Audio from Snake Island. Russians, this is a Russian warship. I propose you lay down your arms and surrender, avoid bloodshed and unnecessary victims. Otherwise, you'll be bombed. Ukrainians, Russian warship, go fuck yourself. They were all killed. Holy shit. President Zelensky confirmed the events and said the border guards died bravely defending the island and would be posthumously awarded the Hero of Ukraine medal. Terrible, man. When Hasan started to work for Fox News, lol? Guys, you're talking about people that have historically literally worked with the Axis. Okay? The Koch brothers, for example. Not many know this, but the reason why the Koch brothers are so fucking wealthy is because the main guy, the father of the Koch brothers, the old Koch, originally created this this piece of technology that would make drilling easier. Okay, I forget what it is, but they also famously at the time worked with both sides during World War II. Also, saying that I am a Fox News commentator or whatever is really fucking stupid, considering that I'm expressly anti-Putin, whereas they seemingly are pro-Putin. I don't know what's going on there. It's kind of weird. Doesn't seem very America first to me, but what do I know?
This deal that would be in the interest of humanity, not just of the Ukrainians. Both sides need to take a step back.
Oh, you're saying that because I have the Fox News logo colors? Is that why? Like right up here where it says Putin is very bad. Fox News breaking? Yeah, that's deliberate. Sorry, I didn't realize that. Yeah, my bad. Okay, yeah, Haas News breaking. The only reason people think you're pro-Putin is because you kind of come off like you're both sizing the issue. Yeah, I know. I don't know how else to fucking describe it. If you want, like... Listen, I've said this from day one. If you want coverage that's just like, Vladimir Putin is really bad across the board, which he is, okay, and no one else, and like nothing else, and he has no intentions, let's not even try to understand what the reasoning is behind why he's engaging in these sorts of actions. It's because he's like fucking crazy and bad and wrong, which he is, again. But like no need to offer additional context. And go watch CNN. Go watch any other fucking. You can get that information on every outlet. Not only that, but people will literally fucking say that, you know, anyone that goes beyond that and anyone that even mentions anything outside of that is actually technically pro-Putin and, you know, deserting America or whatever, or anti-America and anti-Ukraine. So, yeah, I don't know. You can get that everywhere else.
Major step back must be Putin's, but the United States, and I'm mentioning the United States because the European Union is non-existent, it has rendered itself non-existent. The United States has to make a deal that involves a kind of neutrality for the Ukraine. The United States is never going to send troops to Ukraine, will never prevent Putin from trampling upon the rights and lives of the Ukrainians. At least declare that and make this part of the bargaining process by which the people of the Ukraine will be liberated from Russian troops.
Like, that is the part that is, like, incredibly fucking dangerous. Like, America claiming that they were gonna, you know, act if, you know, America quite literally fucking poking the bear at the behest of Ukrainians who have a very legitimate fear of Russia was not good. It was not the right thing to do. And to the people who are saying, like, well, what else were they supposed to do? What can they fucking do? Well, then what are you going to do? Is it going to be war? Because if you can't go to fucking war, if you can't actually engage in war because, you know, nuclear deterrent, okay? You can't actually engage in war because you're terrified of Russia's nuclear power, then what are you supposed to do? It's the worst consequence. It's the worst way to deal with this problem.
Let me ask you about the role of the UN. I want to play the speech of UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres speaking last night at the United Nations Security Council in New York.
This is the saddest moment in my tenure as Secretary General of the United Nations. I started this meeting of the Security Council addressing...
Might as well hand over Europe, HasanAbi, if that's your conclusion. Well, there is an endpoint to the madness, and that is the endpoint where he meets a force that has also nukes. I hope. I don't know.
President Putin, and telling him from the bottom of my heart, stop your troops from an offensive to the Ukraine, give peace a chance, because too many people have already died. During the meeting, President Putin announced a special military operation in the Donbass and required the Ukrainian troops to lay down their arms. So in the present second...
As of 2022, Russia had about 4,447 warheads, 1,500 of which are deployed on ballistic missiles and heavy bomber bases, with another roughly 977 strategic warheads. What the fuck? According to the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists 2 hours ago.
Circumstances, I must change my appeal. And I must say, President Putin, in the name of humanity, bring your troops back to Russia. In the name of humanity, do not allow to start in Europe what could be the worst war since the beginning of the century. What is clear for me is that this war doesn't make any sense. It violates the principles of the Charter, and it causes, or will cause, if it doesn't stop, a level of suffering Europe has not known since at least the volcanic crisis.
That is the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres speaking last night at the UN Security Council, an emergency meeting that was called as Russia then began the invasion of Ukraine. Yanis Varoufakis, your response to his comments, do you think the UN has any more power than what you're saying is now an eviscerated European Union?
Not. Antonio Guterres made a moving speech, a good speech. But he mentioned the Charter of the United Nations and the need to respect it. Well, there's no doubt that Putin is not respecting it. And we should do our utmost to make sure that he does respect it, or that he pays a price for not respecting it. But at the same time, let's not forget, Amy, we are old enough to remember how the United Nations Charter was absolutely violated, turned into a piece of paper with no value whatsoever by George W. Bush when he invaded Iraq without any permission or any due process involving the United Nations. Even before that, in 1999, NATO bombarded Yugoslavia, and the Clinton administration back then dismissed the United Nations, bypassed the United Nations, effectively rendered it inoperative. So the United Nations is a fine idea. Internationalism is the only way forward. But I'm afraid that Antonio Guterres is, the chief in an empty tent.
I'm looking at a tweet from New York Times reporter. Anti-war solo pickets like this are popping up in cities across Russia. It's not much, but they're arrested almost immediately, often upon leaving their homes when the cops know to expect them. Here's Sofia Rusova, co-chair of Russia's trade union of journalists, and a handful of anti-war protesters has gathered outside of Ukraine's embassy in Moscow, and they're arrested. What about the population inside Russia? Who stands to gain from this and who loses? In fact, won't the sanctions strengthen the hand, even though some of Russia's billionaires are targeted by the sanctions? If they're cut off from the rest of the economy outside, it is those billionaires' businesses inside that Russia will have to depend on.
Well, I'm ever so glad that you mentioned the anti-war movement within Russia, because our best comrades, our best friends and collaborators in bringing about peace are the Democrats in Russia, the Democrats in China, the Democrats in the United States of America, small d Democrats. I'm not referring to the ruling party. And it is always important that we ask ourselves the question, whenever we do something or suggest something or propose a policy, what effect is this going to have on the Democrats in Russia? And I very much fear that the West is behaving as if with the sole purpose in mind to strengthen Putin against the Democrats in Russia. Because when you encircle Russia with NATO troops and NATO nuclear weapons, you are giving Putin very powerful arguments within Russia to effectively continue the oppression of Democrats in Russia. This war is the result on the
This is the classic dichotomy all the time. This is why I know people get super triggered when we bring up like the West's involvement in this circumstance. And this does not mean that Vladimir Putin is not a bad guy or anything. And it's not like the West is not goading Vladimir Putin exclusively or urging him to take action or anything. But this has happened time and time again. America goes in, or Western nations go in somewhere, okay, and they fuck shit up. And the people in that country, that are progressive, people in that country that are fighting against their oppressive authoritarian government, now have to focus on the external factor, okay? And that's precisely what happens all the time, okay? One of the immediate examples I can give you from this is when in Turkey, when the coup d'etat happened, okay, the last coup, where America's very own CIA asset, Fethullah Gülen, was able to launch a failed coup in Turkey. And the country basically got together and supported Erdogan, despite the fact that Erdogan was not popular at the time, despite the fact that his popularity was waning, despite the fact that there were plenty of fucking people who despised Erdogan. There are plenty of people in my chat who fucking despise Erdogan. I hate Erdogan, right? But we all certainly hate Fethullah Gülen even more than Erdogan. Thank you. Okay? Fethullah Gülen is a CIA asset. He lives in the Poconos. He's a fucking religious cleric. And he had his tentacles basically in all of like the Turkish criminal justice system, police force, army. Okay? He was able to launch like basically like sleeper cells pretty much. Okay? And he would never have been able to do that without America's support. Now, that created a system where Erdogan was able to then declare martial law and do a referendum on changing the constitution of Turkey and changing Turkey from a parliamentary system to a presidential one, basically creating a system where he had even more power. He had awesome powers. Okay? And extend his regime and the lifeline of his regime, despite the fact that he is authoritarian. And that happened because of Western involvement in the country. I'm giving you information that is near and dear to me from my life, okay? And from my personal experience and from what I know. And when that happens, and when that happened in Iran, the identical situation occurred. Okay? You always are going to make it so much harder for a country to deal with these issues on its own when America gets involved with it, with the country's affairs. Okay? When NATO encircles Russia, in the eyes of the Russian public, which otherwise would protest Vladimir Putin, they will see NATO as a legitimate a legitimate Western force, nuclear superpower that is surrounding their country with military bases. I know people say it's a defensive pact, but that is how it's seen. Okay? And it's also not so much of a defensive pact when NATO ends up not being so defensive in other countries. Maybe not Russia, but proxy war with Russia over Libya, over not NATO in this situation, but Syria. Okay? And I'm talking about people who would otherwise despise Vladimir Putin. You're weakening their resolve whenever you meddle in this country's affairs. Okay? That's just how it happens historically, and that's how it will continue to happen. Just like when Vladimir Putin invades Ukraine, you are galvanizing some of the worst, most reactionary fucking forces and their impact. Even if they are unpopular in the eyes of the Ukrainian people, they will no longer continue to be unpopular in the eyes of the Ukrainian people because now they are seen as an emancipatory force. They are the liberators now, okay? And that will be remembered. Zelensky will be remembered as a weak leader that needs to that needs to be replaced with someone else who actually is going to show a strong force against Russia. And the same goes for America as well. That makes the country overall way worse. Even if the United States does not successfully facilitate a coup d'etat and put in position of power a reactionary leader like they have done in Latin American countries so many times. Even if that fails, you are then strengthening the leadership that is reactionary, that comes and takes control and points itself as a anti-imperialist, anti-Western force, the liberator, the force for good, for the good of the people. Okay? That's what's happening. Western involvement is causing that legitimate, that Hasan is chud. You are so off point, always talking about NATO. Shut the fuck up, okay? Anomalous jumps in radiation levels recorded in Kiev region near Chernobyl. Oh, Jesus fucking Christ. Not 3.8 Röntgen. Not great, not terrible. Sorry. That's not good. Not good at all. I don't even know what to say about that. Okay, let's continue.
On the one hand, of NATO expansionism, and on the other hand, of course, crucially, the great glee with which Putin grabs the opportunity that the United States and NATO and Europe give him to have this war in order to enhance his authority.
Bro, why listen to this neocon? This person worked with Mike Pompeo. Check your source piece. Yanis Varoufakis, who is the fucking socialist leader of Progressive International. You're calling him a neocon? Yeah, he's a little bit too much of a fucking pan-European supremacist. For sure. There is a little bit of too much of that, like, you know, he maybe loves Europe a little too much, okay? That's a reasonable thing to say. But, like, you know, he literally a socialist. Also worked at Valve, too.
His brutal, cruel authority over the good people, the good Democrats of Russia.
Well, we want to thank you so much, Yanis Varoufakis, for joining us. We're hoping also to be joined by a peace activist from Ukraine, but he had to make his way into a war underground shelter in Kiev. I also want to say about the peace movement in the United States. I know that Code Pink has Saturday called for an emergency rally online to demand no war in Ukraine. I think it's particularly important for the corporate media to pay attention. They're going to be featuring peace actors from the U.S., UK, Ukraine, Russia, Germany, France. How important it is to hear those voices as well. Yanis Varoufakis, member of the Greek Parliament, former finance minister of Greece, founder of the Progressive International with Senator Bernie Sanders. Thank you so much.